important, okay? Because I'm going to be moving all around, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand right here. So I just got through running, so I got to stretch a little bit every now and then. So, okay. How much oxygen is in room air? How much oxygen is in this air in this room? You got to know that. I don't think you remember it from last semester. About 20.93%, right? About 21% is room air, is oxygen. So out of that 21%, we have to feed ourselves with oxygen, right? In order to produce energy. What happens if you don't get oxygen? How long can you live without oxygen? Good question, huh? You want to try? Okay. And so, if you can make it, you know, when I was a kid, every time we'd go across a bridge, we'd try to hold our breath and see if we could make it to the other end. And so some of those bridges were pretty long. We never couldn't make it. But normally about 2 to 3 minutes, you start taking oxygen, right? And so you can practice holding your breath, and then you can get better at it. They had a guy that just set a record, and he swam 200 yards without breathing. And so I don't know how he did that, but and these divers that go way down and come way back up, hundreds and hundreds of feet, and so they're pretty good at conserving oxygen. And so this guy had flippers, but he don't use much oxygen at all, right? And so we have to have oxygen, and you have to have oxygen in order to produce energy. 21% oxygen, about 79% nitrogen, okay? And then the rest is a bunch of little gases, helium, and a bunch of little piddly stuff that's in the air there. And so when we exercise, we breathe through our mouth, mostly. When we sit in class, we breathe through our nose, mostly. And so, because you don't need a lot of oxygen to come sit in this class, do you? Huh? Okay, your motor's not running, you're on idle, and so you're not using a lot of oxygen there, right? And so then, whenever you go out and start running, you breathe through your mouth. Okay, and so your nose, you don't take in much air through your nose. So breathe in your nose and out your mouth is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Where do you get more? Unless you got a big nose now, you might work. So if your nose is this big and your nose as big as your mouth, you might get a lot of area. But typically, you have to take in air in your mouth when you breathe. Okay. At rest, you're breathing about 12 breaths per minute. Okay, and you count it, and so about 12 to 15. And then, when you exercise, you may breathe in about 40 to 50 breaths per minute. Okay, because you need what? Oxygen, right? So, with exercise, we have to take in what? Oxygen, right? Now, the more oxygen that you can use, the fitter you are. You can take it in, but if the muscles don't use it, it doesn't do any good, right? When we do CPR, we can breathe into somebody, right? And so we breathe in, we take some little oxygen for ourselves, and then we breathe out about 16%, we breathe out. So that's plenty to share, right? So you can share your oxygen, right? So with exercise, oxygen is important in order to get to the cells in order to do work or exercise. It can go to the cell, it comes in, gets in the blood, goes to the cell. The cell doesn't have the right biochemistry in it, it doesn't use the oxygen. It doesn't have a motor in there that can use the oxygen. So, we can ship it there, but it's not used, right? And so, we have to have our aerobic enzymes, we have to have our mitochondria, we have to have all the biochemistry in the cell in order to use the oxygen. Okay? That's why that cyclists produce a lot of biochemistry changes in their cycling muscles. Runners produce a lot of it in their running muscles, right? And it's all specific according to how you train. The best runner will never be the best cyclist. The best cyclist will never be the best runner, right? Because Lance Armstrong ran a marathon, took him 3 hours. The best in the world run a marathon in about 2 hours. So that's an hour slower. And some guy was arguing with me, well, he's got a high VO2 max, he's so great, and so forth. I said, yeah, he's got a high VO2 max, but he's not worth a flip as a runner. We got people in Montgomery that can run a marathon in 3 hours. And so he tried to argue with me, but he didn't know what he's talking about. Okay? And so it's all specific according to how you do what? Train, right? So if you train muscles to use oxygen for long distance running, those muscles are able to use more oxygen. Same thing for cycling, same thing for swimming, same thing for rowing, same thing for any kind of thing. So that relates to what? Specificity of exercise. So if you train somebody and we train them aerobically and you say, hey, let's do a bunch of cycling when you got a runner, is he going to get to be a better runner just by cycling? Doubtful, right? And so your VO2 max may not change, but shipping oxygen to those muscles for exercise is specific, right? So hopefully you're not one of these coaches or personal trainers that say, hey, let's go out and do this, when it may have nothing to do with a sport or activity or whatever they're trying to accomplish, right? Exercise is specific according to how you train, and you need to be very, very specific there. So, since oxygen is so important, and don't buy one of these masks that you put on and limits your ability to take in oxygen. Have you seen those things? Why don't you just put some duct tape over your mouth and cut a little hole in it? Huh? That'll limit your ability to take in oxygen. But what does that do to your speed? It slows you down. Why do you want to slow down? If you want to train at the speed you want to perform at. If you want to train slower, you don't get the benefits. It makes no sense. Every study's ever been done on those things say garbage. Okay, it doesn't work. And I see these dudes in the gym with a big mask on running around the gym. Why? Now, everything has to have a mechanism. What does that mean? There has to be a reason. If you say, hey, I did this and I improved this, there has to be a reason. There has to be science behind it. There has to be some physiology behind it. There's got to be a reason that you get faster, or you take in more oxygen, or use more oxygen, or build bone density. There has to be a mechanism inside the body. You can't see it. Okay? I couldn't take a look at you and say, hey, let's go out and do a run. I'm going to predict how fast all you can run just by looking at your bodies. All right? If we had 20 Olympic athletes in here, they'd probably look like AUM athletes. Okay? You can't look at them and tell. But what about inside? Their chemistry is different. Their bodies underneath that skin is different, right? Okay? I've seen big muscle people and so forth that couldn't lift nothing. Okay? And so it has to be where? In the cells, right? It has to be in the cells. Okay. So that gets us to our most popular word in exercise science. VO2 stands for volume of oxygen, right? And so that's really, really important because the number of calories you burn is related to the amount of oxygen that you use. And y'all know, in class, 1 liter of oxygen equals what? oxygen that you use burns 5 calories. It's simple. You're not burning many calories right now because you're not using much oxygen. If I wanted you to burn calories, I'd get you to do what? Start moving, right? And so picking your body up and so forth, then you take in oxygen, and then you do what? Burn calories, right? Okay. And so we can measure how much oxygen you burn during the day while you sleep. And no matter what you've done, people have probably measured that in terms of how much oxygen it takes to do that particular activity. There's a book called The Compendium of Physical Activity by a lady in Arizona State, and it's published it. And you can look, like running at a certain speed or swimming at a certain speed, or, it estimates, not perfect, playing soccer. They even had people go to clubs and dance, measure that. I hope alcohol didn't affect the results, right? And so they've had people do sex, measure that. I don't know about that, but they've had people do all kinds of stuff, right? Anything you can think of, any kind of work, they've measured oxygen, because what do they want to know? The energy cost of that, right? How many calories does that take? In certain occupations, they measure it, like firefighters. They're supposed to be able to run a mile in NFPA, a mile and a half in, let me see, what is that? A mile and a half in like 12, 13 minutes. They figure if you can't do it in 12, 13 minutes, your aerobic capacity isn't fit enough to do the job that you need to do as a firefighter. You can't. So they've done studies on everything. Some of them are occupational. They've done it in the military with people loading guns or cannons and so forth, and you need a certain fitness for that. There's been a lot of court cases and job discrimination. You didn't hire me because of this, and they have to prove that, okay, we didn't hire you because you're not fit enough to do the job or the work, right? And so they've measured a lot of stuff. It ends up in court, and so we've got lots of data. We've got a portable oxygen analyzer. We've got, let me see, we got 3 oxygen analyzers in our lab. They're about $50,000, $60,000 a piece, and so very, very expensive. And so we've got one, and it's called a Cosmed. It's portable. We can put it on you right now and send you all over the campus and then measure how much oxygen you use, no matter what you do during your activity. We've done it with yoga. We've done a couple of yoga studies and see if that's moderate or high or low intensity or whatever activity and so forth. So we've done studies with that. Soccer is probably one of the most studied things in the world, because the Europeans, if you went to a conference like this and in a room like this with a guy talking about basketball, about soccer or something, you won't get in. Okay. Or cycling in Europe, you won't get in. Okay. And so United States, they may have a few people show up. So it's different in different countries. But they've measured like the pacer test and the yo-yo test, and all those tests. They've measured any energy cost of all those kinds of things and so forth. And so lots of things have been measured and evaluated. And so why is that important for exercise prescription? Because we need to know the activity you do is related to what? How much energy you use, right? Okay. If it's for weight loss, if it's for cardiovascular fitness, or no matter what it tends to be for, right? So we need to know that kind of information, and we can look it up because people have done that before. Back to what I was talking about, we've got this real expensive Cosmed. This is really, really expensive. A friend of mine, I think he was at Duke, and he had his students, and they were measuring like yard work. And he had somebody with a Cosmed on. He had a couple Cosmeds and had a big multi-million-dollar grant. So he had plenty of money. And one of his students ran over his Cosmed with a lawnmower. $50,000 piece of equipment, measuring energy cost of cutting grass. So that's pretty neat. Okay. So VO2 is important, and we measure VO2 in units. What units do we use to measure VO2 in?
Are you talking about relative or?
Yes.
Relative is milliliters times kilograms.
Milliliters per kilogram per minute.
Yeah.
And absolute is what?
Milliliters?
Liters per minute. So you did learn something in that class. Okay, we measured it milliliters per kilogram per minute, and that's relative. Now, it's relative to how big you are, right? The bigger you are, the more oxygen you use, right? So, bigger people need to take in more oxygen because they have more cells, right? So we measured it in milliliters per kilogram of body weight per minute. And I've done thousands and thousands of those tests. And so I've been in the lab like for one study we had about 500 people we measured. So put them on the treadmill, hook them up, and run them, run them, run them. The next one, throw them on there, run them, run them, run them. So thousands of tests. So then we can measure liters per minute, because liters per minute tells us what? How many calories they burn, right? And so for every liter, they burn 5 calories. Your fitness level is based upon not liters per minute, but milliliters per kilogram per minute. Okay. Now, if you are world class aerobic athlete, your VO2 max is about 80 milliliters per kilogram per minute. I think I've tested one person who was that high. That was a Navy SEAL. We hardly could get that guy finished. But that's high. Okay. There's some. They measure some higher than that. And people are getting fitter and so forth, and so some higher. I've measured some people. The VO2 max is like 4 milliliters per kilogram per minute. And our physician says, I don't think that person's going to be with us a whole lot longer. Okay? Because the ability of their bodies to take in what? Oxygen. They couldn't come to this class. They couldn't walk up the steps to get here. Okay? And so that's really, really low, right? Okay? The average female has a VO2 max of about 35 milliliters per kilogram per minute, which is average, healthy, average female. Okay. Average male is about a little over 40 milliliters per kilogram per minute. So why are men higher than women?
They're usually bigger, hearts are bigger, so they can take in more.
Yeah, bigger heart. See, we do have good hearts, right?
Take care of them.
They're a little bigger, right? And the more you exercise, the bigger your heart is. The heart muscle is bigger and the left ventricle is bigger with exercise. Okay, so I have a big heart, right? My resting heart rate is less than 40, less than 55. So for my age, that's pretty slow. Okay. Okay. Women's blood volume tends to be less, and then women tend to lose blood with their menstrual cycle, and so their blood volume's a little less, and so the heart's a little bit smaller, and so they don't have as much blood in order to transport the oxygen. So that's one reason their VO2s tend to be a little lower. But even when we look at men versus women and all the track records and so forth, there's only about a 1% difference in male versus female. Okay, and so that's not a lot. Okay, 1 to 10% difference there. Not a big difference. Okay, and before puberty, there's no difference in males and females. So little boy and little girl are pretty much equal in running and everything else until after puberty. Then testosterone and so forth, males tend to get a little bit more muscle mass, and then women tend to put a little more body fat on. So puts them at a little bit slightly less, but still world record. world record for the marathon is a little over 2 hours for men. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes for women. So it's only, 20 minutes and 26.2 miles. And the 100 meters or whatever, it's like a second, like zip, male, female. Okay, really, 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 really close. With athletes, with soccer players, most of the women's soccer players we tested are around 50 or higher. Okay, some a little bit lower than that with women, and males are like 55 or higher. Tend to be the World Cup guys tend to be about 65. Okay, in terms of their VO2 maxes. So it's all specific according to your fitness level and how you train, your exercise levels, and so forth. The higher it is, the less risk you have for a heart attack and other factors. So you want a fairly decent what? VO2 max. Even the Olympic weightlifters have VO2 maxes of over 50 average. Okay? So even though they're not aerobic athletes, they tend to have fairly good VO2 maxes there. So that's why when we do exercise prescription, we have a lot of consideration for aerobic exercise, because aerobic exercise affects what? Your heart, your blood, your muscles, your overall fitness, your overall performance and health. So after your VO2 max gets so low, you end up in a nursing home or someplace, and then what happens? They put you if they put you in a hospital bed, or what happens? What does that do to your VO2 max? It goes down. Like astronauts and so forth, they come out of space with no gravity. Some have not. They couldn't walk when they get back to Earth because they didn't have the fitness, because they weren't working against gravity. And so they've done studies where they put people in hospital beds and make them sit and lay in beds all day long and so forth. Their VO2 maxes go really, really down quick. One interesting thing is your mitochondria, it uses the oxygen and so forth. That, when you start an exercise program, you increase the number and size of mitochondria within a week. You increase your blood volume within a week of exercise. So that's great, right? What else can you do in a week and get good results like that? Okay, so you get really, really good results there. So if we're training aerobic athletes, they have to have a high VO2 max, right? Aerobic athletes like distance runners and so forth, right? If we're doing mid-distance people, they have to have pretty good, not like Lance Armstrong kind of stuff, but above average. Okay, and then just for normal people, they need a decent VO2 max, right? And so that's why they need to take, like, if they're not high, a jogging class, or make sure they do the 30 minutes, 5 days a week, exercise stuff, do a lot of physical activity in order to have a decent VO2 max there. In class, there's some equations that you can predict their VO2 based upon how fast they walk or run or whatever. And we'll do some of that kind of stuff later on in the class. But I want you to have some background on what VO2 max is and how it works. Now, in the body, we have different kind of muscle fibers, right? We have fast twitch, and we have what? Slow twitch fibers. Okay, the slow twitch fibers are the aerobic fibers, and they use a lot of energy or oxygen, right? The fast twitch fibers are for the strength, power kinds of things, right? So, you athletes in here, some of you are more what? Fast twitch. Some of you are more slow twitch. And then us ordinary, normal people are what? Middle of the road, right? We're sort of half fast twitch, half slow twitch. So if we did an Olympic distance runner, it'd be about 90% slow twitch. Their vertical jumps are about 12 inches. Pretty bad. Would you want to be on the volleyball team with a vertical jump of 12 inches? I don't think so. And so, because they're all what? Slow twitch, right? They're really good distance runners and really good aerobic athletes, but they have no power. because they don't have the right muscle fibers. They don't have the power muscle fibers there. Okay, then the power athletes, they are about 80% fast twitch fibers. Okay, so if you run 100 meters, you can run it, or these football players, they measure them on 40 meters or whatever, they can run it in 4 seconds or something like that, 4.5 seconds or less, right? They're all what? Power athletes. So what if I had a football lineman and I put him on a marathon training program? Poor guy, right? Guess what? He won't be as good a lineman, and he probably will never run the marathon either. And so, because you got to be what? Specific, right? And so you need to be specific according to what you're trying to accomplish, right? And so if you're going to be a conditioning coach, if you want to be a whatever, if you have a client in the gym, he weighs 350 pounds, and they're big, strong, and so forth, and they want to lose weight, you probably want to do some aerobic stuff with them, right? To help them do what? Lose the weight and burn the calories. So it's all specific, because the enzymes and the chemicals and so forth and the muscles that they use for their sport or whatever are either fast twitch or slow twitch and whatever. And then I think I've told the class, mixed programs give you mixed results, right? So if you want to be a distance runner, you do distance running, right? If you want to be a sprinter, you do what? Sprint. If you mix them, you get what? A little bit of this and a little bit of that. Okay, and so you don't get really good at anything. You're just in the middle there, someplace. So you have to understand the physiology of fast fibers and slow fibers. The fast fibers are called what kind? Type what?
Type 2.
Type 2, right? We've got type 2A and 2X. So 2A is sort of in the middle. That's like 400-meter runners, wrestlers, that kind of stuff. And then the 2X are for the people that go wide open for 10 seconds or less or something like that. Okay? And then the aerobic is for what? Long distance, right? Aerobically, you should be able to go out and run or walk probably for 12 hours, right? Okay. And so, walking through an amusement park or whatever, you may take 3 or 4 hours. Should be able to do that aerobically, right? If you have any kind of decent fitness there. If you go slow enough, you can walk for many, many hours there. Okay. Now, if we look at the energy systems, we have the ATPPC energy system, right? And that's for what?
Really short bursts.
Short burst, right. And so that runs out after what?
10.
About 10, 15 seconds, right? Okay, and then we have anaerobic glycolysis. It sort of kicks in there, and then that goes up to what? 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. Okay, and so that's for the 400-meter runners, 800-meter runners, and they produce a lot of a chemical called blood lactate, right? And so when you produce lactate, then you produce these hydrogen ions in the muscle, and then the muscle says, oh, I need to slow down, because it starts to do what? Start to burn, right? Okay, and so, see how many crunches you can do, and then see how your stomach feels after about 100 crunches. You'll start to do what? Some people maybe 5 crunches. But it starts to do what? Burn, right? And that's because the muscles are becoming what? Acidic, right? And the muscle likes a pH not too acidic, not too base, right? It likes a normal environment. And so we've got the 3 energy systems If you don't know the energy systems, you cannot prescribe exercise. If you want to improve fitness with ATPPC, you train the people that way, with box jumps and sprints and so forth. Okay, and then if you're going to do the anaerobic glycolysis, that's like 400-meter runners, wrestlers, boxers, and so forth. And then the aerobic is for distance stuff. Now, the average person needs what? Since we're not specializing, we need a little of what? Everything, right? We need some power. Why do we need power? I've got a slide that shows grandma trying to get across the street, and they got the light over there, and it says 17 seconds. She's got 17 seconds to get across the street. She needs what? Power, right? If she doesn't have enough power, she won't make that 17 seconds. She'll get run over, okay? So she's got to get there. And so she has to have a certain amount of power to do that. Or older people getting out of a bathtub. They're not strong enough. And then they fall and break their hip. About 1/3 of women end up having that. And guess what? It kills a lot of them. Why? Because it doesn't heal good. And so they have problems there. So they need enough power to get out of the bathtub. They need enough power. I used to go to my mother's house and she'd buy the water thing. I'd always have to get the water out of the trunk and carry it in there. In Disney World, they have scooters down there because people can't walk through Disney World. They don't, where I'm at, my house got stilts. Some people have elevators to get to there's 13 steps or whatever. They can't get upstairs into their house. They don't have enough power to get up there. So they have to have a lift or an elevator to get up into their house. When I worked in pulmonary rehab, we had really nice people, but they worked in coal mines. In coal mines, they had all that dust from the coal mine. Okay? They had to move all their furniture downstairs in their house. They'd have to carry a little oxygen bottle around them to give them additional oxygen because they couldn't get enough oxygen in on their own out of the room air there. And so they need a certain level of fitness to do that. Now, we really couldn't do anything for their lungs because their lungs were destroyed through the coal dust and coal mines, but we could make the muscle more effective at using oxygen. So the muscle could use the oxygen better than it is able to get, and so maybe they could get up a few steps or something like that. So that was pulmonary rehab. That was really sad. Those were really nice people, great families, good old country people, worked hard all their lives, and then they end up can't breathe. And so it's really, really, really sad, okay, to see people like that. So, we've got to know how to train them, how to work them, how to exercise them, and make sure we do the right kinds of things with them to get the best benefits of the training program that you come up with and develop. Right? Okay. What questions you got? I've been rambling on here about exercise phys because you got to know the background. You have to understand exercise physiology to really prescribe exercise. And so I've seen coaches and so forth have power athletes running 5 miles. It's like I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the mechanism? How's this 5-mile run going to help this person jump higher or sprint quicker or win more games? Can't figure it out. Scientifically, there's no reason for that, right? Yeah.
I've got a question about the fast and slow twitch muscle fibers, because I know one of the types can kind of, or the both that can kind of mimic the other, but they don't become the other, right?
Yeah.
So are these athletes who have like 80-90% of one type, is that what they're genetically born with, or is it like it's able to be, I guess, manipulated in childhood or up to a certain point?
Okay, good question. You can't change fiber types. You don't like your fiber type, blame your mom and dad. Okay? Whatever you inherited, that's what you got. My son, he plays soccer. And he wanted to play football. I said, nope, no football for you. I did football and coached football and all that kind of stuff. I said, no, man, you're, in terms of genetically, he wasn't real big, and he wasn't a great, he couldn't sprinter or whatever, but he was a good endurance. He could run, good. He was smaller and so forth, so he had all the characteristics for something besides football. Okay. It's funny, in the United States, we throw everybody in a pot and just we won't see who comes out the best. Okay? And so we throw every little kid into T-ball, right? Okay, they start out in T-ball. Then they're out there looking at the flowers, and picking dirt, throwing stuff, and so forth. Then next, then they do what? Coach pitch, and you lose some T-ballers. You coach pitch. Then they go to coach pitch to Little League. You lose some more players, and so forth. And then you go from them to like junior high, Babe Ruth League or whatever when I was in school. You lose some players. Then you go to the next level, you lose some players. You go to the next level, you lose some players. And so then, how many of them make it to the major leagues?
Less than 1%.
Yeah, not that many. To begin with, probably most of those T-ballers probably would have been better doing something else, right? If their sport was something they wanted to do to be really good at it, right? Whatever. And so those of you that play sports or whatever, there's certain sports that you would probably be good at, right? When I think back at it, hey, I probably should have done that. I'd been better at that than what I ended up doing, okay? And so genetically, we throw everybody in and just see who comes out on top. In some countries, look at Sweden. At one time, they had all the best women pro golfers in the world, okay? Annika Sorenstam and so forth. Go over there and try to play golf in Sweden right now. How many golf courses are open over there? Not that many. The environment. Huh? What about Rory McIlroy and so forth for Ireland and so forth? So what do? I don't know if they do this, but in the Russian countries, they take all these little girls and they test them. Okay, you're 3 years old and can do 10 pull-ups. Gymnastics for you. And so they put them into gymnastics. And so a lot of countries have taken and they test young athletes and they try to direct them to sports or activities that they'll be good at. Okay. And so, I think Annika Sorenstam didn't get great playing golf in Sweden. They put them in Spain, and they took them to other places. Or now in the U.S., they take them to these tennis camps in Florida, and they take them to other places and so forth in order to get the best training and condition they can. In Russia, they don't waste time on you in terms of, okay, everybody play the T-ball. Okay, it's like, okay, this is your sport. This is what you need to do. And it's all club stuff too, right? And so y'all did probably what? Club, what high school stuff, and so it's more club-oriented types of things there. But back to your question, in terms of muscle fibers, if you're, let's say, if you've got more fast twitch fibers and you do aerobic training, you can make those fast fibers a little bit more aerobically there. You can't change one from another, but you can make one more like another one there. And so yeah, if you're all fast twitch and then you start doing the anaerobic glycolysis, you can make those fibers better able to perform and the chemicals in the fibers better to be able to do that. But you can't change the fibers because the neurons that go to the fibers, because you can't change the neurons. And so, but you can make one kind of fiber more alike or similar to another type of fiber. When I was at the Olympic Training Center, we took the Olympic athletes, this is years ago, and we took a needle about, a syringe about like this, we had a needle on it, and we would jab it into their vastus lateralis, and we would take a little sample of muscle out, and then we looked at that muscle and we put it under a microscope, and we could count the muscle fibers, and we could look at the muscle fibers in terms of fast twitch or slow twitch fibers there. Okay, and so that's first when fiber typing came available and came out that we did that. Now, it's not a lot of fun to have it done to you. And so if you're on an exercise bike, pedaling a bike, and I come along with a big needle and I'm going to take some muscle out of your leg, we put lidocaine to deaden it. It's probably not what you wanted to do for fun. Okay, so, good for science, not for fun. Okay, so sometimes you have to be a subject, right? And I could tell you some stories about that. But we fiber typed and we look at that. Now, there's other ways to predict, right? We could do a cyclogometer test and do a wattage test, and we could see how much power you could produce on a cycle. That would tell us your fiber types, right? Your fast twitch fibers there. We could do a vertical jump with you. And so if we could take you into the lab and you could do a 40-inch vertical jump, that means what? Fast twitch, right? That means you have really good fast twitch fibers there. So we can predict. We can predict. So you volleyball girls, y'all are mostly what? Fast twitch, right? Are any of you good at running marathons? Any marathon runners on your team? I'm joking with you, but you could run a marathon, but it probably won't be a world record. And you can do it, right? Oprah ran a marathon, and so anybody runs a marathon, and like the triathlons that we do, we can tell you we're not always running. We are moving, but it's always not what you consider to be out there running, 8-minute miles or whatever. We're just trying to keep going and so forth. And so yeah, you're fast twitch athletes. It would make no sense for me to have you go out there and run 4 or 5 miles. Why? And so you're not ever going to run 4 or 5 miles on a match, are you? I don't think so. But would we do some aerobic training with you? For general fitness, right? Same thing with like baseball pitchers and so forth. They jog or whatever to recover, right? Right? They need a certain amount of aerobic capacity. But if you throw a baseball, that's all what? Fast twitch, right? Fast twitch, so forth. So the important thing is, don't be the coach that trains them the wrong way for whatever they're trying to do. So first of all, you want to figure out what the goals are, right? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And then you come out with what? The program that matches the goals, right? It's all based upon what? Exercise physiology, right? What's going on there? Now, in sports, exercise physiology studies what? The function of the body, right? How it works. Muscle, bone, so forth. What does biomechanics study? They used to call biomechanics kinesiology, and now everything's kinesiology. Biomechanics, a lot of the biomechanists are engineers because they look at what? Angles and forces and physics and so forth. So that's a different area. Then another area that's important is nutrition. And so a good athlete needs what? Good biomechanics, good coaching, they need good physiology, and they also need good nutrition. And then now we get into the psychology, right? Exactly right. The psychology, behavioral stuff, and so forth, to motivate them in order for them to perform well, like golfers and so forth. So with an athlete or whatever, we have a combination of what? Areas that we look at or stress are important in order to relate it to performance. Physical therapists, They know a good bit about biomechanics because they're looking at what? The way people walk, right? Gaits and walking. Occupational therapists know a lot about hands and how hands operate.